Hi Vivek, it's great to be here. We're in New York, right in the heart of New York, in fact.
Welcome to New York City.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's the first time I just stepped out of the Penn Station. I was just telling your colleague here, it was magical. I really wanted to understand what's the buzz about, and especially studying the AI landscape for the past couple of years. Every industry is here. What is it that excites you about AI and New York? The combination fascinate you?
Well, first of all, New York's home for me. I've been here, I've lived here for more than 20 years now. And it's actually something that's always thriving and always changing. So, being such a big commercial capital, New York tends to have a huge emphasis making sure that it's always transforming and always kind of keeping with the latest change that
Yeah.
is happening in business, that is happening in technology, that's happening in finance. You tend to be kind of on the cutting edge in all of those instances. Right? Last few years, it's also been on the cutting edge in technology, with Silicon Alley kind of being the big startup space that's kind of grown here. Now, for us with AI in particular, it's very interesting because while some of the foundational tools for AI were actually incubated on the West Coast, the application of how AI comes together with business, a lot of that thinking is actually being driven here.
Yeah.
And that's where, for us, it's the perfect spot to be, because you're kind of sitting down with your clients, you're sitting down with some of the key executives who are asking the question of saying, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my customers? And solving that problem is, kind of core to us.
Yeah, I think there are two things here, right? One is you said New York is always transforming, and so is AI, data science, and I
Yeah.
think that makes the marriage all the more happier, right? At the same time, I think the second point that you make, right? Here, biggest businesses are here, and they want results, and they want results today, right? And we're going to talk about a similar topic and a very contemporary topic, which is Gen AI, and what its value is for businesses, right? How do you make it real? And I can't think of a better person to speak than you, right? One of the things that I've observed over the years, right? I've been studying the technology industry for a while as a journalist, as an analyst. There has always been a hype
Yeah.
around many technologies,
Mhm.
but somehow the Gen AI hype has stuck around for more than the other hypes have stood. Why is that? What is it that this thing? What is your observation?
No, it's a great question. I tend to agree mostly with what you've said. So we tend to get this question a lot of saying, is Gen AI all hype, or is it real, right? And I think the answer is that it's mostly real. Now, there's some amount of hype for sure, right? There's companies that are coming out and saying AI is going to be a $20 trillion opportunity. It's 17 trillion. You've got a lot of numbers with trillions thrown around in it, right? And you're seeing just the ton of money that is being put into AI startups. You're seeing all the buzz that's going about it. And inevitably, when something like that happens, you tend to have some amount of money that's put in things that are not real. You have some amount of hype accumulate. And there's some of that happening. But I think when you start getting down to saying, okay, let me start looking at how are people planning to use it, that's when the reality part of it starts emerging.
Yeah.
And to me, there are three things that are really standing out in terms of the AI adoption story. Number one, I think if you think about it, follow the money, right? So follow the money essentially implies, let's take a look at exactly how much is started to get, how much is getting invested. If you take a look at what's going on with what the hypercloud, with the hyperscalers, the cloud providers are doing, they're pumping in massive amounts of investments in terms of putting together data centers. They've already started building out product strategies that are embedding AI into all aspects of what we do in productivity, all aspects of what we do in our day-to-day work. And that's going to have a transformational effect in how we do our work every single day. Here at EXL, we are already testing out some of those feature sets. We are actually in beta mode with some of the cloud providers. They've kind of created some solutions for us, and we're testing those out. It's working well so far. Number two, I think there's an enormous amount of interest and use cases right now that are getting lined up in every single company. So where we stand today is companies are kind of thinking about the next year's budget, 2024 budget. And I can tell you 100% of the clients that EXL's spoken to, and we've reached out to all of our clients, 100% of them are actually investing more in AI next year and probably more the year after. So they're all scaling up their investments. And they're all taking AI to a place of saying this is not just a fad, this is not just experimentation, we are going to have real use cases, right? So that I think starts making it real. And I think the third part that makes it real is just the spread of applications that AI has. And that's where I think I frequently look at the comparison between AI versus, say, robotics or AI versus metaverse. And I think with AI, you have the benefit of use cases that are across every function, that are across a number of different tasks, and the impact that it's starting to create in those tasks is transformational. So when you combine those three things, the investments, the adoption at large companies, and the scope of that adoption, it starts adding up into saying this is for sure, it's real.
There are, I want to touch upon the last 2 points that you made,
Right.
right? And the second point that you made essentially is you're going to see increasing level of investment. At the same time, you also mentioned that whenever there is a hype around, especially some kind of technology, because of the
Mm-hmm.
kind of capital these companies carry, they want to invest in it.
Yeah.
But some of it definitely gets wasted, right? What is EXL's approach? What should be the ideal approach? What is the right framework to differentiate the fluff from what is use cases? And considering that, the point that you mentioned, that EXL is in New York, it's not in San Francisco, it has very low margin of error and immediate results. How do you approach this usually?
Sure. So I think what we are doing is, we are working with our clients and helping them think through their investment decisions. We are helping them kind of figure out what is it that they should invest in and what is it that they are kind of looking for in terms of returns next year. That's for them. And then on a parallel, we are actually doing that for ourselves. We are looking at how can we make AI work for us, both in terms of savings and in terms of what we are taking to market, our product offering, and how can we get AI benefits for ourselves. So let me touch on both of those things. On the first one, for clients. I think most of our clients right now are in a little bit of the experimentation mode. So AI, if you go back to the whole GPT release, it's less than a year old at this point. And in that year, there's been a lot of buzz about, oh, let's try this, let's try that. So the first couple of things that companies started doing was, let me just get access to Chat GPT. Let me open that up. Let me see what happens. That's now gone into a mode where they've actually created teams that are doing experiments, that are testing out what we call proofs of concepts. And now it's getting to a point of saying, we know which proofs of concepts work. Let's now take it to a broader expansion and actually start implementing it. Right. What we are doing is we are working with companies through that staging, helping them build out that funnel, helping them understand what should they take to implementation versus what they shouldn't. And we're actually most importantly helping them work through the investment scenario of, okay, how should you think about these so that if 5 out of 10 work, will you still be able to get your investment case done? How should you think about putting money in a gating criteria so that you actually put a little amount of money first, test it, see the return, then go to the next one, then go to the next one. And I think that thesis of bringing in a financial and an investment thesis to it is actually what's going to help make it real and drive the adoption further. Because the worst thing you can do for something which is a new technology is have the first couple of use cases fizzle out, in which case everyone says, oh, that was fake, and it doesn't work. I also want to address on what EXL is doing ourselves.
Yeah.
I think for ourselves, we are true believers in terms of the potential of what this can create. For us as a company, in terms of productivity of all of our employees, number one. Number two, in actually modernizing all of our assets and our solutions and our technologies and taking that to market. And three, just transformational change in terms of using AI to do things for our clients that we weren't able to do before. And for us, I think the set of all those three things makes this probably one of the most exciting new technology changes that's happened. So
Yeah.
we really believe in what it's going to be able to do for us.
Yeah, I think the first point that you made in this answer, right, especially what you mentioned is a very logistical framework
Mm-hmm.
of identifying when do we want to move to the next step. That is the kind of framework that you set up. You do something small and then you
Test
expand
it
it,
and move.
test and move, right?
Yeah.
The idea of that, while it sounds fascinating, sometimes there can be a chance when it's important to know when to abandon,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Or go ahead and do it. What are some of those parameters? What are some of those? Have you developed a framework to understand that? Have you developed some kind of ideas around it, or is it right now case by case basis?
No, we have created an investment thesis, and we have created thinking and criteria for our clients to be able to take it from one stage to the other. Some parameters are parameters that are financial. Others are around regulatory framework. What allows regulatory approval versus what doesn't, what allows compliance versus what doesn't. And there are elements to it where the technology component starts coming in. And like, is this something that you can possibly do at this point or not? So there's a number of different criteria. Cost is just one of them. And we actually use all of those criteria to both select the use cases and then also ensure that the gating criteria is met from one to the other. The one thing I want to emphasize here is, by its very nature, the AI applications that everyone's working on and the ones we are working on with our clients are going to be things that are going to require iteration, because the technology is changing so quickly. And the underlying criteria, I mean, just yesterday, 2 days ago, OpenAI launched its new capability sets, and they've changed pricing. They've dramatically changed the way they allow access. And I think it's transformational enough that it's going to just enable a whole set of new use cases. So what we are telling our customers is, do this iteratively. Don't think of this as a long build out. Think of it as a series of short builds, and then keep having a viewpoint at the end of each short build and saying it's a go no go decision to go to the next one.
Yeah.
And that's the process that we are recommending that they follow.
Yeah, I think I like that a lot in terms of the clarity. I think it's very important to kind of understand, sometimes where are we going adrift of what we exactly wanted to, especially considering that sometimes it's very fascinating, right? This technology in itself is very
Yeah,
fascinating.
you want to test it out, you want to play with it.
When
Yeah.
ChatGPT came, everybody, all of us were using it, this thing. And I'm sure that business users, top decision makers in the banks and the retail industry, they want to kind of ensure that their employees have the best of the best. So I think that puts a good context to it. My other question to you is, right now, when it comes to building such a technology, right, and sustainably scaling it as a company, as a service provider, EXL, right? It's not just about identifying the right. Now, when we come to the execution, it's also about the factors that come together to build it and ensure its success, right? One of the major things that includes is essentially collaboration and basic talent and the collaboration between that. We did a recent study, right, and we tried to observe what are some of the roles the previously today's generative AI engineers held before, right? How are you addressing this? Are you hiring? Is your to ensure that it is a successful design, you need good talent, and for that, are you hiring generative AI engineers or are you repurposing the existing ML engineers? I want to touch upon the talent aspect, the people who are building that application.
So I think at EXL, we've had a unique advantage in the fact that we've actually been using AI internally and for our clients for a fairly long period of time. We are one of the largest data science companies. We have about 8,000 odd data scientists and data engineers on staff. And that capability and the skill set that we have gives us a very unique advantage in terms of saying, look, we already know how AI works. Generative AI is a new toolkit. So we are kind of retooling and repurposing our workforce there. So we come to it with the fact that we already have the engineering talent. What we've been able to do on top of the engineering talent is, because so much of AI, the use cases are going to be within clients' workflow and clients' processes, is we've taken the knowledge that company has about workflows, the knowledge that we have about running our clients' processes, and bringing that knowledge, embedding the AI with it, and taking an end-to-end solution. So EXL has a very unique advantage in terms of the fact that we already had those teams, and we've been able to just retrain those teams
Correct.
and kind of get to kind of work with a pretty deep skill set.
Yeah, the foundation is strong
The
enough. So
foundation is strong enough. The skill set was there. So we have a pretty stupendous advantage when it
yeah,
says, okay, I don't have to build a team. I
yeah,
just have to retrain.
yeah. And from so we talked about the context and the business. We talked about talent. I also want to talk about some of the challenges, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure there comes a point when there is a difficult conversation with the client saying, you know what, we invested in this, but it's not, you know, this is something not viable, right? Because we are EXL is also learning, right? Everybody is learning about Gen AI, right? Um, when do you firstly when do you give up and before that when do you start understanding, right, that this is not going to be viable, and what are some of the challenges that lead to the realization that this business case is not going to be real?
So I think what you need to do is a lot of this happens in the setup. So you've got to set up the work that you're doing correctly. If something is an experiment, you need to be very, very clear upfront on saying this is an experiment. There's a chance that it won't work. And here are the parameters for it. And here is how soon we'll be able to find out. Right. So number one, the expectation setting. Number two, I think there's a very important thing that you need to do in terms of setting up interim checkpoints. So you need to know if something's not going to work, you need to know that sooner rather than later. And you shouldn't get to a point where you're at the end of the project and that's when you find out. So the couple of those things, setting up the expectations and getting the answer faster. But I think at this point, we've been pretty open with customers in terms of saying, look, this is a brand new technology. There are the odds that X won't work or Y won't work. And that's where I was telling you about the fact that our conversation with the client is always this is iterative, right? You are going to have to work on it in iterations rather than having one silver bullet for something.
Okay, fantastic. So now that we have identified with regards to how we are finding the real business value through business use cases, we have looked at talent, we have looked at collaboration, we have looked at some of the, calling the limit. In today's this thing, have you moved anywhere from POCs to production? Because I was having this conversation just 2 3 months back, and majority of them said that we are just into POCs. So, what has been the your observation?
No, absolutely. So one of the things that differentiates us, and we are right now getting this feedback from customers and from third-party kind of analysts, is that we have an advantage in terms of how fast we've been able to move with this. Some of that goes back to the fact that we really had the experience earlier, we had the teams, and so we were able to kind of mobilize much faster. So we do have a couple of different use cases that are already in production. We are doing a ton of work in the area of what we call agent assistance. So this is effectively where a human plus a machine is interacting with a end consumer and customer, helping with their calls, with their interactions, and the ability for the machine to kind of keep prompting the agent to kind of say what comes next or ask the question. That's something that we've already taken into production. It's live. We're working on a pretty large number of calls that are passing through that particular engine. We've done a couple of different use cases on helping our customers improve their conversational BI, business intelligence applications. A couple of those have gone into production. And there's a lot of things that we are working on right now that are nearing that production stage. Mm-hmm. So I think the focus from us has been, since we've been doing the experiments and the POCs for a while, we think that while we're already in production on a few, by the end of this year, that number is going to be much bigger. And by the end of H1, that number is going to be, on a very, very steep upward curve.
Well, I think one of the things is once you crack it, you can multiply it.
We've now started going to all our client meetings by saying, I'm not going to show you a deck, I'm going to show you a demo. And the ability to go there and actually point out to them that here's something that's already working.
Yeah.
I don't have to trust me on what my capabilities are, see what I have. That's made the adoption curve a lot faster.
Which is fantastic. My final question to you is, as we come closer to the end of this conversation, is right. What does the future of business look like? I know it's a very broad question to answer, but at the same time, right, when we realize data analytics is going to be a big thing, right, around 2009, 10, 11, right, that time everybody realized the potential, and now we are seeing what it is, right? We are seeing in action as to what difference it made. What do you think is the world of Gen AI in businesses, real businesses, going to look like? How is it going to change?
So it's a very broad question of saying, what is effectively what does the future of work look like? And I'm going to give you what I can conjure up as my best answer and take it with a pinch of salt. I think there's going to be pretty big transformation in the way work gets done. And the analogy that I want you to think about is that before Excel came around, people were still doing financial analysis. People were still creating models, P&Ls. They were still, probably analyzing data in pivot tables. But it was done in a very different manner. It was done in a very manual way. And when Excel kind of got adopted, it basically led to a complete, universal adoption. And everyone then started creating their own use cases out of it. You created financial analyst packs, you created stuff for analysis, and so on and so forth. But everyone got some productivity benefits out of it. So here was a core underlying tool which everyone customized based on their use case, and everyone got productivity benefits out of it. And those productive benefits were real. You could now start churning more data than you ever needed to. You could start getting better insights faster than you ever needed to. I think that's the analogy that I want to kind of drive towards for AI. It's going to almost have universal adoption. There is not going to be a company in the world that says, I'm not using AI. There's not going to be anything that we use in our own personal applications that won't have a component of AI to it. So, all of us in our personal capacity and in the companies that we work with are going to have this toolkit, which is going to be creating productivity benefits for us. Now, the range of those productivity benefits and the manner in which it's going to get delivered are going to differ. But the productivity benefits are real, and they will happen, and they will get almost universal adoption to it. There is a flip side to this as well. The flip side is, what happens because of productivity? What happens if those jobs go away? What happens if somebody's job gets replaced by AI? And I'm not going to tell you that that won't happen. It probably will happen in certain areas, in very small areas. But I also believe in the power of, when all of this productivity gets released, it's going to get put into something new, which is going to create some new, business, something new for the world, and that's going to create more jobs. I don't believe in this zero sum game for jobs. So I think of it as a very big positive for the world, where there's going to be an enormous amount of productivity, and then think of that productivity as creating something new, which will kind of add to our overall employee pool, overall goodness in the society.
Fantastic. On that bright note of
AI, and I hope I'm right.
On that bright note of a Gen AI filled productive future. Yeah. Thank you so much, Vivek, for making the time. It was very interesting to learn. I'd always heard that you whenever you talk about AI and Gen AI, you usually dazzle the crowd. I am definitely dazzled. Well, very
thank
insightful.
you. Thank you. You're kind, and thank you for coming to visit us today. We really enjoyed having you over in our facilities, and hopefully you'll get a look around here.